So, hello, folks. It's Sunday afternoon here in Thailand, and Sunday morning for Europe. We could even go so far as to say that this is Sunday morning worship service, except that I spell it worship, WAR. And so today we can talk about um, what is referred to as the 10 fetters, specifically a 10 fetter as a model. And that the first thing that we can do is define what fetters are. But in fact, in several suttas, they have different words for it. One of the Pali words is asava, and the other term is fetter. Now, actually, kilesa. And so the kilesa is translated as a fetter, and fetter is a 17th, 18th century word for bondage, like a ball and chain, handcuffs, that kind of thing is what the word fetter means. Something like tying a dog to a tree. You would fetter the dog. So the word asava has a different connotation. It has the connotation that's more like a pox or a blackhead or a cyst, an irregularity that can be cut out. Now, think about it in the sense of a face full of blackheads, and you push out one blackhead, and you push out another, and you push out another, and you push out another, and it looks like that you're not making a whole lot of progress. But if you keep pushing out the blackheads over and over and over again, the face will become um, better looking. Um, Not so much stuff there. And so uh, the the fetters and the asava are very, very closely related in the sense of the lower, the five lower are actually, I made a mistake. They're not lower. What they are as rupa. So you have five Rupa Fetters and five Arupa Fetters. And in common English Buddhism, they're referred to as lower fetters and higher fetters, and that makes a very, very big confusion. All right. Now, the second point to make is that the five lower fetters are, let us say, a big topic in the suttas. They're referred to in a number of different suttas. And that the three most lower fetters are generally associated with Sotapan, but the way that the Western Buddhism sees it is that it's too closely tied without really seeing what's going on. And so we'll talk about that. And then the fourth and the fifth fetters are that which can be worked upon once we have the first three fetters, the first lower fetters or asava dealt with. Now, this fits in precisely with the what we find in both the Great 40, the discussion of the Eightfold Noble Path, and also in the Anapanasati Sutta, where the Anapanasati Sutta, it goes in this sequence that we practice Anapanasati for the fulfillment of the four foundations of mindfulness, the Satipatthana. Now, the four foundations of mindfulness are the body, the feelings, the mental states, or our attitudes, and the actual thoughts and workings of the mind itself. And so The four foundations of mindfulness are often misunderstood, but in the context of Anapanasati, this is the four sections of Anapanasati, and that we practice all of them together at one time. When I say one time, I'm not talking about a nanosecond or even a second. Maybe over a 5 or 10 minute period of time, you can cover all four. Now, the way that we cover that is the Buddha talks about it in the sense of one by one as they occur. Jesus, you keep shaking your head like you've heard all of this stuff before.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah, I heard
Oh,
this.
all right. So, when we practice the first three fetters, which is basically understanding personality view, which we'll cover, and also Silabata Paramasa are a set of rules that we live by, and just to correct our delusions about how to use rules, rites, rituals, laws, supposed tos, ought tos, and that kind of thing. And then the third fetter is the fetter of doubt, in the sense of the doubt about what is and what is not the correct way of practice. What is and is not the Eightfold Noble Path, or what is the way. Now, when we pile on that layer of doubt and the eradication of doubt about what is the right way of practice and what not, what's not the right way of practice, we actually have to consider that issue of rites, rules, and rituals in the sense of don't make this stuff a rule. And that's exactly what's happened with Western Buddhism. They like to get structure, they like to have a bottom line. They like to know step by step what are all of the milestones, etc. Now, as I've said before, the five Rupa jhanas are covered in various suttas along the way, especially in regard to the Eightfold Noble Path. The Arupa jhanas are never mentioned in any of the suttas. They are mentioned one time in the Samyutta Nikaya, and they are mentioned one time in the Abhidhamma. And the five Arupa Fetters are different in the Abhidhamma and in the Samyutta Nikaya. Now that's really weird, isn't it? Okay, that they're different, not exactly the same. There are some similarities. In fact, the ones that are the most similar would be mana or conceit, um, restlessness or agitation, and ignorance. So these are the three that are similar, but the other two are different. Now, what this actually can mean for you is that if we can take care of the five lower or Rupa um, fetters, then as we're doing that, we remove the five Arupa jhana or Arupa fetters along the way. Now, I have never seen it in any literature where it says that these fetters are associated in the way of the first three fetters that I mentioned are associated with Sotapan. The fourth and the fifth fetters are associated with the Anagami and the Sotagami. And then the five Arupa fetters are associated with the Arahat. Jesus, have you heard that? That the Arupa Fetters are associated with the Arahat, and that someone doesn't work on them until after they become the Anagami, which means cleaning up the first 5 fetters. This would be what I would consider a fallacy in belief. Do you have anything to say, Jesus?
I just thinking. I heard the first 3 for Sotapana, and then there were another one for Sakadagami. Yeah, I didn't know about the Arupa Fetters and the Rupa Fetters. Never heard about that, honestly.
Okay, well, generally you probably heard of them as lower fetters and higher fetters.
Yes.
Okay, that's not the case. They're not listed as lower and higher. They're listed as Rupa and Arupa. And so that's, again, one of the problems with Western Buddhism is that they keep changing things, and they've made this whole system into a method or a plan of action that doesn't exist in the sutras anywhere. It doesn't even exist in the Tripitaka anywhere. To be honest with you, then, the way to say it is all these Western teachers, especially those that have never been monks before, they've jumped on this bandwagon is that, oh, we've got now an unreachable goal that we can set for our students so that we can keep them paying. Keep paying customers. Keep getting them to support us while we never have to deliver anything. But if you understand what the Buddha's teaching really is all about, is that this freedom, this enlightenment, this nibbana, this whatever you want to call it, is immediately available. It's instantly available. All you have to do is to, in this particular moment, come out of those fetters, and that's all there is to it. The issue, though, is that we'll find ourselves ignorantly back into it again. And so we have to practice over and over and over and over again. And that there is no goal. Now, one of the things that I find quite funny is that the hindrance called restlessness and worry is also one of the Arupa Fetters. Is this not true?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, here's the funny thing. The very, very first thing that someone needs to do, according to the teaching of the Buddha, is to come out of the hindrances immediately. And yet they've got this restlessness packed way up there at the top as if it's the last thing that you have to do. Now, in that regard, that model that they're practicing has got a fallacy built right into it. Either that or it's a different kind of restlessness. And so what they'll say is, oh, one of them is the actuality of restlessness and the other one is a seed of restlessness. Okay? The next point is that as we practice to see those hindrances, and let's take a moment and talk about the second noble truth. The second noble truth, according to the Mahayana, is attachment or clinging is the cause of suffering. But a closer examination of the sutras will reveal first off, is a bad translation of loba moha dosa, which is the Pali, as lust, greed, and ignorance, or delusion. Well, if we can see what's happening in the mind immediately and make a change to it, we come out of our wanting things that we don't have, which is called greed or lust, and also having to put up with stuff that we don't want to put up, which is called ill will. If we can see that immediately, we can come out of the dukkha immediately and go right into the third noble truth immediately. And so there's then these two different models that you can see. One is the Buddhist model, especially Western Buddhist model of slow, not so steady progress, going to a delusional state. And then there is the model of the Buddha: come out of your ill will, your greed, your wanting, so that you are in a state of safety, security, comfort, and satisfaction immediately. And that's all there is to it. Now, let's define, going back to where we were before with the first three fetters, in the Anapanasati Sutta, where it says that we practice Anapanasati for the fulfillment of the Satipatthana. It also then, in a later place, says that we practice the Satipatthana for the fulfillment of the Sambojjhana. The Sambojjhana is now referred to when we say the Sambo, the bow in there is awakening or seeing things clearly. And in this case, the word jhana is actually just the word for factor. That in fact, that's what the word jhana means when we're talking about the 4 jhanas or 8 jhanas or 9 jhanas and states that the Western Buddhist is trying to attain. That word jhana actually means kind of factors or states. So the Sambojjhana has a particular position in that it is directly related to the Eightfold Noble Path, in the sense that the Eightfold Noble Path is that which the beginner begins to practice and gains skill in, to where the Sambojjhana is actually the completion of the Eightfold Noble Path. The Sambojjhana, the 7 factors of enlightenment, are actually the fulfillment of the Eightfold Noble Path, and you can see that directly by comparing the two. Because, for instance, sati means to remember, to be here now, to look. And in the Anapanasati Sutta, the Sambojjhana is referred to as unremitting sati. Now, what do we mean by unremitting? Unremitting sati means coming back and coming back and coming back and coming back. So let me give you an example of that with a drum. So here is the drum head, and here is the mallet. Okay? If I do this, slowly, slowly, slowly approach and then get there, is that how to play a drum?
No.
No, that's not how you play a drum. Well, this is not how you play the Sambojjhana. Now, how about this? You keep coming back and hitting it over and over and over again. This is correct practice. And yet the Western model has that's the Western model. I see some smiles there of understanding, right? That's the Western model. And that's how they're trying to apply these fetters, to where the reality is that that's not the case at all. The Sambojjhana has that quality of unremitting. It's kind of like the years ago they had an advertisement on television to advertise Duracell or some battery, and they put it into the battery bunny, the Easter bunny. And what does that bunny do? He's hitting that drum. Exactly. Over and over and over and over and over again. This is the way that we see unremitting, is we keep hammering at it and hammering at it and hitting it over and over and over again. Now, if we bring mindfulness or sati up over and over and over again, we begin to see the states of mind that we have. Well, remember that we've talked about the states of mind as one of the Eightfold Noble Path items, is to see the state of mind that you're in. So that's the second one in a row that we have: unremitting investigation of the states of mind, is how it's actually stated in the sutta. Unremitting investigation of the states will then bring on, if we're doing it correctly, it brings on the third item, unremitting, and in this case it's the word energy. But in the Eightfold Noble Path, it's referred to as right noble effort. But when our effort becomes unremitting, then it's quite energetic. The example that I use is a jack-in-the-box. Let us say that you found an old jack-in-the-box in the garage someplace, and now you're turning it, something about round the monkey goes, and then pop goes the weasel, except that when the lid gets loose, the jack doesn't pop out. You got to go in there and grab that jack by the head and pull him out, sometimes over and over and over again. But when the jack of the box is working correctly, after you turn the crank, pop goes the weasel, and the the jack pops out. Okay, and I'm giving you that analogy in the sense that in the beginning of practice, it takes effort. But once you're on a roll, and I use that word specifically as a pun, once you're on a roll, you don't have to push so much. That in fact, you can start pushing the car and it's stopped, and you're pushing it and pushing it, and it's hard to get it started. But once you get it moving and get it on a roll, if you stop to wipe your brow, now you got to go catch up to the car because it's rolling with its own energy. Okay, so this is why the third item on the Sambojjhana is exactly that third item, because now our effort is unremitting. It doesn't stop. Why? Because we practiced over and over and over again to put the right effort in, and now the effort comes up immediately. In the sense of unremitting mindfulness, you remember to look, and then you have unremitting investigation, which then follows by the unremitting right noble effort or energy. That in fact, if you understand the Sambojjhana correctly, you can begin to see exactly how the Buddha set up the Eightfold Noble Path. So once we have the right noble effort in the form of unremitting energy, the next item on the Sambojjhana is, guess what? Does anybody know? Anybody here got the fourth one nailed? How about you, Jesu? You're muted. Go ahead.
Iti, I think.
Piti Sukha.
Iti Sukha, yeah.
Piti Sukha. Now, guess what? In the Pali, quite often, in fact, in normal language, Piti Sukha is a word that's together. One of the few places where Piti and Sukha are broken apart is in the Anapanasati Sutta, where we develop the Sukha first, and then we develop the Piti. Now, what is then the difference? Well, the sukha is actually the satisfaction, and the piti is the sometimes overwhelming joy that you do have that satisfaction. So the piti sukha now becomes unremitting because the energy is unremitting, because our investigation is unremitting, because our um, Eightfold and Noble Path, starting with sati, is unremitting. So that this also ties in the Eightfold Noble Path with the practice of Anapanasati. All of this stuff fits really well together when you begin to see what's happening. Now, the fourth one leads to the fifth one. What is the fifth one? Mikey, do you have a clue about what is the fifth item on the the Sambojjhana? How about you, Jesus? Anybody got a clue?
Mindful investigation, LGBT. I think it's samadhi.
No, it's rest or peacefulness.
Oh yeah, pasadi. Yeah.
Yeah, and that actually goes back then to the Eightfold Noble Path, and specifically to the fourth item of Anapanasati, to relax the body. So when you have unremitting um, uh, mindfulness, unremitting sati, unremitting investigation, unremitting energy, unremitting piti sukha, and unremitting relaxation, we're pretty well along the path, especially the part about each one of these is listed as unremitting. Keep going. Keep Easter bunnying this stuff. Keep pounding on that place of being free. Now, the next two are samadhi and upekkha. Now, let's talk about samadhi for a moment, because it's almost always translated incorrectly as concentration, to where samadhi actually means unification of mind or collectiveness. Or let us also talk about it in the sense of a camera of being in focus, because you've got that peace, you've got that stability. You can now really see clearly. The mind is actually unified. Now, with that unification of mind comes that extra part that we talked about before, upekkha, which is actually the real middle path of being balanced for everything. Except that in Sambojjhana, it's unremitting. It's unremitting. So you get unremitting getting your mind together. You have unremitting balance because of all of these other factors. Now, the next part of the Anapanasati states that we practice and attain this unremitting mindfulness, unremitting investigation of the states of mind, unremitting effort and energy, unremitting peacefulness, unremitting uh, samadhi, and unremitting balance. When we have those seven factors, that then leads to, does anybody know the answer to the next? What is the actual point of practicing the Sambojjhana? What's Anapanasati to the Satipatthana to the Sambojjhana leads then to what? What's the end of the Anapanasati Sutta? What's the end of the Great 40? Sutta number 117 is a state called knowledge and deliverance, if you use Bodhi. Okay, so it means first knowledge. Now, if we go back to the Sabha Asava Sutta, we could see where it says that knowledge is of the first three fetters. That when you can see that, in fact, this goes back to the Eightfold Noble Path, all the way back to the Four Noble Truths. That if you can see dukkha unremittingly, if you keep seeing it and keep seeing it and keep seeing it over and over again, every time a thought comes up, you investigate that thought and say, hey, that's dukkha, out of here. If you have that, then you can see immediately what is the source of it. So the way that it can be said is, this is dukkha. This is the source of dukkha. This is the finish of dukkha. And the Eightfold Noble Path, that's the method, right? And then the Sabha Asava Sutta states, and this is in verse 11 if you want to look it up, that when you have unremitting, when you have the investigation, when you have awareness, when you have attention, wise, noble attention to the Four Noble Truths, that will bring the end of personality view, rites, rules, and rituals, and doubt about what is the path and what is not the path. So the first three fetters, then, according to the suttas, are related to that knowledge part. And then fetter number 4 and 5, which is in fact now back to the second noble truth of greed and wanting things and ill will, which comes in the form often of anger. That's the deliverance. That if you can see who you actually are, if you can see personality view, if you can see that you constructed your personality from the rites, rules, rituals, the way things supposed to, a map, a plan, everything that you learned from mommy and daddy, and that the second fetter and the first fetter, the personality view, get bound up together. And when you pull that stuff apart with the Eightfold Noble Path, you recognize the only way to live our life is with this path. If you keep looking, you keep investigating, you keep noticing, and you remove all doubt about what is and what is not the path. And by the way, this statement that I'm saying about what doubt about what is and what is not the path comes from Sutta number 24, the chariot race. But it's made clear there that that's what doubt is. And then the Sabha Asava Sutta number 2 makes the statement is that if you practice the Four Noble Truths over and over and over again to the point that they're unremitting, then you are free from those first three fetters, which are then associated with Sotapan, leaving now that the Sotapan is the one that has the knowledge about what to practice and how to practice. Now, if you know what to practice and how to practice at an unremitting level, then you can go right to directly to piti sukha and relaxation, as opposed to getting stuck in fetter number 5 and 4, wanting stuff. But in fact, you can see that fetter number 5 and number 4 are actually back to the second noble truth of greed and ill will. And then we see that the first fetter is about knowledge, which is exactly not ignorance, not delusion. Then you can see right there the first 5 Rupa jhanas, or excuse me, Rupa Fetters, is actually the second noble truth, the cause of suffering. And when we are able to finish that, then we have quite a lot going for us. Now, how do the 5 Arupa Fetters fit in? Well, one can say then that if you observe someone and you're a skilled observer, and how do you become a skilled observer of other people is becoming a skilled observer of one's own mind, recognizing that the human mind is basically all just one thing. Brain is brain. And training from our family and culture is just training. There are differences in between Muslims and Christians because of the training that they've had, but they're all really basically trained the same way. Wanting something that you don't have and angry at those people who are not like you and wanting them to join you. So, if you see it this way, we're talking about the eradication of the second noble truth. If you eradicate the second noble truth, then by not having a cause for dukkha, there is dukkha left. So where do these high Arupa jhanas come in is that while the Rupa jhanas, and by the word Rupa means physical, that in fact in Thai they refer to as the Buddha statues as Buddha Rupa, in the sense that it's a physical thing, as opposed to the real Buddha is mental. It's a Rupa. So, in this regard, what they're actually implying is that the Rupa Fetters can be seen. If somebody's angry, you can see it even if they can't. If somebody is greedy for something, you can see it even if they can't. If someone is doubtful and confused, you can see that even if they can't. If someone is stuck in rites, rules, rituals, supposed tos, and it's supposed to be this way and I want it to be that way, that's personality view and Sila Paramasa, the second fetter. So these can be seen. However, the high five, which they refer to as five, is high, is actually the Arupa Fetters, those that are difficult to see, not easily seen. Because of this, it's actually quite difficult for anyone, especially ordinary Buddhists, especially Western Buddhists, they can't tell the difference between an anagami and an arahat. Why? Because the stuff is different only in the sense of the arahat actually does not have to deal with this stuff anymore because he's dealt with it enough to where the anagami still has blemishes. He still has unwholesome thoughts that he has to eradicate. So let's look at these five Arupa Fetters. But before we do, does anybody have any questions about the five Rupa Fetters? I'll go over them again. Personality view, attachments to right, rules, rituals, the way things are supposed to be, all of the stuff that you heard from your parents, any learned stuff, and then personality view. Let's talk about that for just a moment in the sense of who am I? What is your personality? Where does it come from? If you understand that your personality actually comes from your rites, rules, and rituals, that when you begin to change your rules, when you start to change the way you see the world as how it ought to be, guess what? Your personality begins to change. And yet, in all of the religions, the old Hindu, the old Christian, the new Christian, the Islam, all of those religions see it as you are fixed. You can't change. Christianity is really big on this, is that you cannot change yourself. In Romans, it says, what? Good? You're not good. Only God is good. In John, it says, oh, you must take Jesus as your Savior. You must get forgiveness of your sins because all have sinned and will continue to sin and stay short of the glory of God. Okay, what that means is that the personality, once it's set, it's fixed. It goes so far as to be a soul. You can't change your core. You can't change your soul. Once you die, your soul will continue, but now it becomes a football on the field of heaven and hell, one goal or the other. And it's up to God to kick your football whichever way he wants to. So you better suck up. If you don't suck up to God, your personality is so stuck that you can't change. But the Buddha says, oh no. In fact, the right way of looking at it is that your personality is not fixed, that you're a moving target. In fact, the real way of stating it is you can change who you are. You can take the right noble effort to make a change. Instead of staying in disappointment and unhappiness and ordinary worldly stuff, you can have unremitting sukha, unremitting pleasure, unremitting piti sukha. That's a big change. Up to you if you're going to make that change. So this is actually why we can begin to see, oh, if I study the Four Noble Truths correctly and see that we can, in fact, change our thought, then by changing the thought, we change our attitude. By changing our attitude, we change our feeling. By changing our feeling, we begin to relax the body. These are the satipatthana right there. If we can change and relax the body and change our feelings and change our attitude and change our thoughts, then we're not the same person as the uptight Joe Blow who's trying to make a name for himself, who is stuck in personality. Okay, so this is what personality in short is that it's your idea of who you are. And the correct idea of who you are is you're a moving target. Instead of saying that I'm a German or I'm a Frenchman or I'm a Russian or I'm a Putin or I'm a Democrat or I'm a loyalist to this religion or that religion, about the only thing that you can say is I'm human. Why? Because everything else in there can change. You're not a Christian. People who, in fact, a lot of people will call themselves ex-Christian, which actually means that they still identify as Christian, only they're not in Christian, they're beside it. They're outside of it, but they still identify as Christian by saying they're ex-Christian. Instead of saying that they're this or they're that, recognize in the issue of personality view, the way that the Buddha says it, is that you're not any of that. In fact, I'm not always human. Sometimes I'm a gorilla. Sometimes I'm an invalid. Sometimes I'm a this, sometimes I'm a that. I'm a moving target, never the same. So this is real personality view. And then you begin to understand that, oh, well, where did I get that personality from the beginning? The answer is I made that shit up out of all the stuff that I was told. My mommy defined who I was. My daddy defined who I was. My teachers defined who I was, etc., like that. And in fact, if we change our way of looking in the sense of what is right and what is wrong, we begin to change who we are. And if we change enough, we can say that there is no such thing as right or wrong. There's merely opinions about what is right and what is wrong. What really is real is reality. And reality doesn't have any good or any bad to it. And but the way that we can come out of these two fetters is by practicing the path to the point that we know for sure what is the correct path. at what is not the correct path. Doing it the way that we've been doing it is not the correct path. Why? Because you've proven to yourself all of these times over and over again that being miserable doesn't get you out of misery. It just brings more of it. So that's not the path. And what is the path is unremitting mindfulness, unremitting investigation, unremitting energy, unremitting piti sukha, unremitting joy. Keep coming back to the joy. Keep being happy. That will bring unremitting peace, which will then, when you're peaceful, quiet, and still, that allows the whole mind, the whole being, your attitude, your feelings, your body, and all your thoughts to congeal into being just one thing. But that one thing now is still a moving target. So where scatterbrains, they think that, oh, I'm all of those things, or in fact, they're none of it. So this is the Sambojjhana in the way of talking about these fetters, and that when we see that we're not who we thought we were, that we see that the reason that I am who I am, and that's all that I am, is because I made that shit up, and that I can change it, and that there's a path and a method to do that. These three things together is real knowledge. And with that knowledge, we can see whenever greed comes up. We can see whenever bad feelings come up. We can see that stuff. We're not ignorant to it anymore. Why? Because we have unremitting mindfulness, unremitting investigation. We can see it. This is, in fact, what the Sotapan really is. Someone who is really so eager to see what's real, the one who delights in what is real. So you have that quality of delight, that piti sukha. You have that quality of unremitting investigation. You're eager to see. And this is what makes the Sotapan, the actual Sotapan, is because he is willing at any point in time, and every point in time, to look at his own greed, to look at his own ill will. And so the Sotapan doesn't stay angry for very long. As soon as he catches wind of his own anger, he's going to put a stop to it. He's got the energy to do that. So these are where we have the difference in between the Sotapan and the Sotagami, is that the Sotapan is already practicing to be a Sotagami. So let me put this to you then, is that the fact that Sotapan is a process. It's a progress, and that the Buddha talks about it in two ways. We have the path and the fruit. So the path would be when someone can see that they can come out of their hindrances. When somebody knows that they can come out of their hindrances just by seeing the hindrances, coming out of the hindrances, and knows that he can do that and come back, that's the first path of Sotapan. But the fruit of the Sotapan is the eagerness and the joy and the delight. Being delighted that we're on the path, that we know what the path is. Without a doubt, we know exactly how to practice. So that's the fruit of the Sotapan. But guess what? The fruit of the Sotapan is now the path of the Anagami. It's the path of the Sotagami. And when we get most of those fourth and fifth fetters released, that is the fruit of the Sotagami, which is also now the path to the Anagami. And so they overlap, just like shingles on a roof. If you had shingles on the roof and you had one labeled Sotapan, and then you had another shingle labeled Anagami, and another one labeled Sotagami, and another one Arahat, guess what? You're going to get rained on underneath. They've got to be overlapping. So when you see that it's overlapping, it's a process like that, but it's based upon that quality of knowledge and deliverance. So the knowledge part is the first three lower fetters, and the deliverance is using that knowledge to come out of our greed and our ill will. Now, here's something that's very interesting. That the very first day that somebody practices this, isn't it the case that they're looking at their hindrance and seeing their own greed, their own ill will, right then and there? So the Sotagami path is actually step 1 as well as step 4 and step 5. They overlap that much. They stretch really, really far. They stretch so much that, in fact, they're almost not worth having as milestones, because the ordinary mind, the ordinary Western Buddhist mind, will put a difference between it. Now, here in Thailand, out on the roads, they do have milestones. If you've bicycled or taken a motorbike, you'll recognize those milestones, especially from a motorbike. 29 kilometers. 28 kilometers. They're little rocks that they paint white and put a number on it, right? Now, the point is that these milestones, 19 kilometers to Surat Thani, 18 kilometers to Surat Thani, like that, those things are connected together. They only managed to put the rocks there just to help you remember. But the reality is that there is no ditch between rock number 19 and rock number 18. A gulf, an emptiness, like shingles. No, they're overlapping. That in fact, mile marker number 19 or kilometer 19 melts into 18. And 18 melts into 17. So this is the way to see that progress, that in fact you can have just a little bit of knowledge, and that'll help you come out of that anger right away. Or you can have full knowledge, and then when you have full knowledge about anger, you're not likely to stay angry very long. That in fact the show would be that the Sotapan will get angry and say maybe 7 angry words. He'll get into an argument and argue back and forth about 7 times, and after that he could see it, and I'm out of here. By the time someone reaches this anagami phase, they only do it 1 time. Okay, I'll argue with you for a minute, and then I'm going to stop. I'm not interested in trying to win. Not interested in competing with you. And then the anagami, he can see that argument coming, and he's going to try to sidestep it to where the arahant can see it a mile away, and he doesn't have to step out of the way. He's already gone. So when we recognize it like that, that it's all just a process, then we can see that those 5 lower fetters already have, or the 5 Rupa Fetters already have the 5 upper fetters built right in. An example of the one that I've already given is restlessness. You don't have to go much into it to see when you're restless is because you want something. If you don't want anything, then you're probably not going to be restless to get it. But sometimes there is anxiety that comes and we don't even know what it is. And the reason that we don't know is because we haven't watched the thought that happened right before it. And so a momentary, actually a tenth of a second, lack of unremitting investigation of states will bring up anxiety. But as soon as the anagami or the sotagami sees that anxiety, he's going to say, aha, I see you, and out you go. So this is the way that we practice. The second one that we can look at. Hello, folks. See you, Martin. So the second one that we can look at then is called mana, which is also conceit. Now, what we actually mean by conceit is I am. Well, we're back to personality view now. The other way of looking at it, in fact, possibly the best way to look at it is that conceit or mana in the Pali, is actually competition. And what do we often compete for? I want to be right. I want to win this conversation. I want to win this argument. Well, if we can see an argument coming a mile ahead, that means then that we're seeing the invitation to compete with someone, to compare ourselves. Now, the thing about it is that comparison then always leads to one of two things. It leads to either pride, I win, or jealousy or envy, he wins and I lose. That in fact, this issue about what is the difference between envy and jealousy. Does anybody have a working technical definition of the difference between envy and jealousy? Women have a good handle on that. So, Martin, what's your friend's name? Give her a shot at defining the difference between what is envy and what is jealousy.
She's thinking about it, but she's not sure.
I bet so. Does anybody here have a surefire definition of the difference between jealousy? How about you, Carl? How about you, Ben? How about you, Paul? How about you, Mikey? Come on, Mikey. What's the difference between envy and jealousy? It's a big point because that's part of the distinction between what's in the Abhidhamma in their high five and what's in the Samyutta Nikaya. So what is the difference? Go ahead, Martin.
I may have a definition. Maybe jealousy is when you are afraid of losing something, and envy is when you want something you don't have.
Woohoo! He got it. That's exactly right. Yes, that's it. Jealousy is what the wife has about her husband's girlfriend. And envy is what the girlfriend has for the wife. If you can see it that way, then you see it exactly. Okay, he's got her, she's married to him, and I want him. I am envious of her. Okay, so this is what always happens when we compare ourselves. It's the wife and the girlfriend are there comparing each other. They're comparing dresses, they're comparing shoes, they're comparing their love, they're comparing anything that they can because they're stuck in the fact that the other one has won. The wife thinks that the girlfriend has won, and the girlfriend thinks the husband has won. Now, here in Thailand, they've got a very kind of unique arrangement. In fact, it's part of the culture that the wife gets the house and the girlfriend gets the Mercedes. Or I guess this year of Tesla. Why? Because the wife stays in the house, she stays put, and the girlfriend can take her car and go off someplace else. But that's the tradition in Thailand is that the wife gets the house and the girlfriend gets the wheels. But in the way of looking at it, we don't want to be either stuck in jealousy or stuck in envy. We want to win. We want to be the husband. We want to have both. This is called pride. All right. And that in Christianity, they're really, really big on don't be full of pride. And what is their opposite of pride is humility. You got to humble yourself before the Lord. How many of you heard statements like that? Yeah, you got to be humble. Okay. I've heard the song. It's a country western song where, Lord, it's really hard to be humble when you're great in every way, when you're perfect in every way. And so this is actually that kind of a pride. Now, the Buddha has it different. you could actually say that the Christians would diss the Buddha because he's not humble at all. He's a champion. You've heard him referred to as a lion. In other places, it's referred to as a bull. Now, when we're talking about a bull in the Pali, we're not talking about a bull who's a male cow. We're talking about a bull elephant, a big dude, someone who voices, okay, that the lion roars the Dhamma. He's not prideful, he's sure. The eradication of doubt is what brings this lion's roar, that you've got it. You know you've got it. You don't have to compare yourselves with all of those guys who say they've got it and then say they don't. Which is the answer that I have about the recent video. Some people will say they've got it, and then upon better investigation, they see that they don't. It's better to not claim anything until you're sure, because you have investigated and you know that you know the Dhamma. You know that you know beyond a shadow of a doubt what the actual teachings of the Buddha are. Well, guess what? Again, that's Sotapan. That's not Arahat. So why is then Mana part of this high five fetters that the Western Buddhism claims as only for the Arahat? Oh no, we have this all along the way. Now, the last fetter that I want to talk about, because it's getting late, is the fetter of ignorance. Now, basically, we as Westerners are trained by our school system that we're supposed to know. They give us tests. I had tests in the first grade. I had tests in the second grade. I remember making a great big high score. In fact, the teacher put a great big O, not an A, but an O, saying that my arithmetic was outstanding. That teacher gave me permission to actually like mathematics. She should have given an O outstanding grade to every kid in class, made them all mathematicians. But I was the only one. So in my second grade class, I'm the only one that wound up getting a degree in mathematics. Why? Because I was given permission to be very good at it. And here I'm giving you all, each one, permission to be very good at the Dhamma, so that you don't go around claiming things that you don't have and then having to retract it later. Be sure now that you know what you're talking about. And so in that regard, we do not have to worry too much about these high five fetters, because we're already working on them every step along the way. Now, this one about the last one is called ignorance. Well, let's refer back before we go too deeply into it. What's the actual deepest cause of dukkha? Let's go in fact and look at the the Paticca Samuppada. Mikey, what's the very first foundational point of the Paticca Samuppada?
I'm not sure.
Ajiva.
Jiva.
Ajiva, not knowing, ignorance. So we start off in ignorance and we wind up in, guess what? Ignorance. You start off not knowing, but you want to know. And because you want to know, you keep piling on information. That piling up of information is called sankhara. That sankhara, as it piles up, becomes our attachments to the way things are supposed to be, because we learned about how things are supposed to be. Well, guess what? At the end of the journey, we're still left with ignorance. The Arahat, he may in fact know Pali, but he doesn't know every dialect of Pali, and he doesn't know Sanskrit, and he doesn't know ancient Greek, and he doesn't know Latin. There is no end to ignorance. But there is an end to not liking being ignorant. That, in fact, we give up our I want to know so that you become comfortable with what you already do know. You've got enough. In fact, I've got so much knowledge. I've got maybe 1/10 of 1% of all human knowledge. That's about how much I've got. But as I'm growing older, that's rotting away too. In fact, some of you can see that I'm haltering, looking for the right word, because I'm forgetful. Guess what? It's okay to forget, so long as you're not forgetting what you need to remember. And that is, everything is okay, everything is fine, there's no reason to want anything, that I am comfortable and happy and satisfied with the way things are. I've got enough, but I'll never know everything. I'll always remain mostly ignorant. As much mathematics that I've had, I can't solve all of the math problems on YouTube. Never mind walking into NASA and blowing them away with my math skills. Can't do it. We have to understand that we're someplace in the middle, and that middle is a moving target. And this is why ignorance winds up being the last fetter, is when we get used to that we're ignorant. That we'll never know everything. We'll never get everything that we want. We'll never actually stop wanting so long as we want to know. So can you come to the point of being comfortable and happy with what you do know? And in fact, the only really thing that you really do need to know are these three things called knowledge, which are the first three fetters, not the last 10th fetter. The first three is what? Who am I? And we eventually come to the point of, I don't know. I was Dickie Boy then, and then I was Luke, and now I was Doc, and then I was this, and I was that, and then I was a Dhammarato, and now I don't know what the hell I am. And isn't that marvelous? We don't know. The second one is that everything that I did know was about a rite, a rule, a ritual, a supposed to, something that should be the way that it is, culture, etc., like that. And now we find out that that's a major source of discomfort and dissatisfaction. It's better if I just forget politics, if I forget nationalism, if I forget all about this invention and that invention. If I forget all about mathematics, I would be better off, because as soon as I think I know mathematics, that's what I'm doing, is I'm comparing myself to other mathematicians, causing myself either pride or envy or jealousy. But if I forget everything about mathematics, if I become ignorant about it, I'm okay. So I welcome you all to just being ignorant. That's the best state to be in. In fact, you've probably heard ignorance is bliss. Guess what? That's the fact. The fact is that you're not going to know everything. And what you don't know is not going to hurt you. It's what you do think that you do know, that's what's going to hurt you. If I know that Tesla is better than Mercedes, then I want a Tesla. If I don't know the difference between Tesla and Mercedes, I don't know. Doesn't matter. I don't want either one of them. So that's the last fetter. The last fetter that they have is actually the first fetter. Ignorance about who I am. So in that regard, there is no such thing as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They don't last like that. They're all bound together. And by seeing it as 1 through 10 as a model in Western Buddhism, you're setting up a system that you'll never attain. which is one of the first things that I said. That's why the Western teaching group so loves that method, is because they're setting something up that's impossible, which means their students keep coming back and paying $5, $10, $100 to listen to the 5 or 10 fetters yet again and still not be able to deal with them.
Dhammarato.
Yes.
Would if some student goes to you talking about the fetters, that what is the best what you will say to him? Like forget about it completely, or
No, I'd say watch this video.
okay.
Because things are a little bit complicated. That I could have said, just forget about that stuff and left everyone disappointed. Why? Because everyone here wants to know. Well, in the past hour, I've told you everything you need to know. So stop wanting to know more. You've already gotten it all. So that's what I would say to him is that get a firm foundation in what really is the first 3 fetters, the floor, the Rupa Fetters, because the high fetters, the Arupa Fetters, are not mentioned in the suttas anywhere. Only one place in the Samyutta Nikaya and only one place in the Abhidhamma, and they're not even the same. But Western Buddhists, Western people, we want a long list. We want step after step after step after step. Or in fact, there's really only 2, knowledge and deliverance, which, by the way, gives us a very good handle on exactly what the definition of enlightenment is. Because there's one thing about Western Buddhism is they keep leaving the word enlightenment way up there in that level of ignorance. Everybody's got their own idea about what is enlightenment. So I'll give it to you now straight. There's 2 kinds of enlightenment. One, to turn the lights on, the light of day, shine a light on it. What is that? That's seeing it. That's knowledge. And once you see that it's heavy, you can set it down. That's the deliverance. So you have light that you shine, or you have light because you've set down something heavy. Those are the 2 kinds of enlightenment, which is exactly what the Buddha teaches, knowledge and deliverance. And you do not have to wait 5, 10, or 20 years paying $100 or $200 or $300,000 to get that enlightenment by paying some guru. You can do it right bloody now. Right now. And then next time, do it again. And then do it again. And then do it again. And so this is why we talk about it as practice. We have to practice. We have to remember to practice this, because if we don't practice it, we don't develop that skill of sati, to remember. And when we are well practiced, we practice unremittingly. Every time that we think about it, we do it. Every time you remember it. You do it right then. But we have to set up a bit of time in a formal sense that we're going to say, okay, I'm going to set the timer for 5 minutes or so. And in this time of 5 minutes, I'm going to remember to look at what I'm doing and make a change. I'm going to actually practice for 5 minutes the Eightfold Noble Path. But once a day is not enough. We need to do it time after time after time. And in fact, the best way of thinking about doing it is taking 5 minutes every hour. And if you can take 5 minutes every hour and remember to practice and remember to look and remember to change and remember to be happy, remember to be sukha, remember to be gladdening the mind, remember to feel good, remember to relax, remember all parts of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. If we keep practicing that, we begin to fill in the gaps in that hour. And so filling in those gaps so that I remember more and more often to come out of my desire, to come out of my want, to come out of my hate, to come out of my ignorance and come into a state of everything's fine. Wow, everything is fine. Wow, everything is actually quite good. Reality is the good stuff. I could refer to it as paradise because it's good. Why? Because I can see it as good. Because I can see it not as good in the sense of good and bad, but it's good in the sense of skillful, in the sense of wholesome, in the sense of that's my choice to make. How many people here, if they knew they had the choice between being disappointed and unhappy versus being happy and joyful, which would you choose? It's your choice, you know. And you remember to make that choice. That's what formal practice is to give us the skill to remember that you've got a choice every thought. So enough of this. Jesus, let me hear it, man. What you got?
Well, it's this talk it made me a lot of satisfaction, and I'm very forgetful, so I have to rewatch it to get it super in my system because I think it was touching all the things I needed to know. Thank you very much.
Okay. How about you, Luke? Hello, Luke. Yes. What you have to say? Anything? You turn your camera on, but I don't hear you. When you get your microphone straightened out, just bust right in on us. Martin, you have joined us late. You missed the first part of this, but you've gotten quite a lot. So what do you think?
That was very good, and I'm looking forward to see the beginning of the video, but it's already very good. It's enough.
Ivan, what about you? You've got your hand up.
Kind of forgotten, but I think I was trying to say that I remember how you often say it's not about striving but persistence. So just apply it over and over. I'm pretty sure I have something to say, but if I remember, I will say it.
Okay, how about you, Carl?
Nothing to it, to be honest.
Nothing. You've probably heard all of this before. There's really nothing to it. Basically, what we're talking about is that once you see that you're not who you thought you were, and that who you thought you were was actually just about a set of standards, rules, and rituals, and now you know for sure that the path out of that, the path of joy, is the Eightfold Noble Path. That's all there is to it. There's nothing to it. That's your knowledge. Harwan. Go ahead, Ivan.
Oh no, I was going to say I have a very quick question. It's just basically before this call, I was like in some very subtle ignorance or dissatisfaction. I don't know what it is, but basically hindrance. But the moment I hear you say something, I mean, I hear it a lot of times, but when I hear it again, it's like instantly, it's just like, oh, okay, I know what, like this instant satisfaction. I guess I'm just curious what is happening. Like, it's like the moment I hear you say this, it's like, yeah, I know this already. Like the self-doubt just go away so quickly. Like it's crazy.
That's
like so
that's
quick.
a good reason why to come on these video talks so that you can remember that you've already got everything you need.
Yeah.
You've already got it. All you have to do is remember that you've got it. That's the worthwhileness of the practice. Is practices formally, I've got everything I need over and over and over again. And pretty soon you begin to see that really deeply.
Yes.
That you're already okay.
Yes.
So, Christopher, what have you got?
Hi. I don't know. I mean, I think I will just continue to not pay too much attention to fetters and perfections and stream enterers versus arahats, and I don't know. Doesn't have my curiosity too much. It's the sunset right now. I'm gonna go sit. I'm gonna go sit and
Me
watch it
too.
get dark.
I'm gonna go sit in the toilet.
I'm gonna go watch it get dark. Thank you, guys.
All right. Carwan, you have anything to say?
Well,
Go ahead. I'm listening.
oh, I have enjoyed it a lot, man. I'm just starting to actually to read about the fetters, and I was surprised about what you said, that some of those fetters are not even maybe in the suttas, and that basically we have made it up. Some people before us have made the model up, and I'm curious to know in the time of Buddha whether he has taught it in those. Because you said 5 of them were not in the suttas, if I've understood it correctly. And so who have made them up?
The guys who wrote the Abhidhamma that was written 300 or 400 years after the Buddha. The guys who wrote the Samyutta Nikaya actually came centuries after the Buddha. The Samyutta Nikaya is generally talked about as being written somewhere around the time of Ashoka. And definitely the Dinga Nikaya was written during the time of Emperor Ashoka. So we're talking about 100 years or more after the Buddha, and the Samyutta Nikaya is basically just a collection. It's just a collection of all the stuff that was already said. The oldest stuff is in the Sutta Nipata, the Udana, and the Majjhima Nikaya. All of that's at the time of the Buddha. Everything else, the Angara Nikaya, much of the Kundana Nikaya, and for sure the Abhidhamma, and absolutely the Visuddhimagga, is hundreds and hundreds of years after the Buddha, which means you've got hundreds and hundreds of viewpoints being added to the actual teachings of the Buddha, which were quite simple. So we've been running along about an hour and a half now. Mikey, why don't you take this thing home?
Okay, thank you everyone for being here today. This was a splendid Sangha call. Nice to see happy faces and hear the Buddha Dhamma. If you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and check out OpenSanghaFoundation.org. You can make a profile, make new friends, find Watts. There's all sorts of resources and fun things to play with on the website. We also have, these Skype calls. We have Skype groups. We have a Sangha UK and a Sangha US that you can join and come chat with us and join these calls. And we also have a new Skype group called One-on-One Dhamma Calls, where you can schedule and set up a call with Dhammarato or one of the other seasoned practitioners in our Sangha.
Yes, seasoned is the right word. For me, I'm pepper.
I'm a little salty.
You're a little salty. Okay, well, thank you very much. So, everybody, thank you for joining.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you later. Be
Thank
sure to get on the website, Open Sangha Foundation. Post on the groups. Post a post, in fact. Write something up. Tell us about yourself. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy changing yourself.
Hey, maybe this is not the place for this, but I did try to post to follow up or comment on something on the forums there once, and it never came through. I think it's a permission issue. I'm not sure. You guys
Talk to Mikey about it.
Okay. All right. Talk to you later.
All right. Thank you, guys.